The strange signals began on a Tuesday. They came from somewhere past Mars, weak pulses that made the scientists at NASA scratch their heads. After 3 days of the same pattern, they knew it wasn't random space noise. Something or someone was out there. Captain Frank Miller got the call at 3 a.m. As the lead commander of Earth's small but proud International Space Defense Force, he was used to being woken up, but not like this. Not with news that could change human history forever. "We need your ship ready in 48 hours, said the voice on the other end. "You're going to make first contact." The ISS Harbinger wasn't the biggest ship humanity had built, but it was the fastest and had the best communication equipment, perfect for a diplomatic mission. As Miller walked through the ship's corridors, he watched his crew prepare with a mix of excitement and fear on their faces. Lieutenant Sofia Martinez checked her translation algorithms one more time. As the ship's xenolinguist, the pressure sat heavily on her shoulders. How do you speak to something that evolved on a different world? She had created hundreds of possible communication patterns based on math and basic physics, universal concepts that any advanced civilization would understand. "Think they'll be friendly?" asked Communications Officer Gregory Walsh as he helped Martinez set up her equipment. "They traveled across space to reach us," Martinez said. "That takes resources and planning. They didn't come all this way just to say hello and leave." The Harbinger left Earth's orbit with a crew of 23. Their mission was simple: approach slowly, broadcast peaceful intentions, and establish basic communication. President Laura Bell had personally approved the message they would send: a series of mathematical sequences followed by basic information about human biology, culture, and history. It took 2 weeks to reach the source of the signals. As they approached Jupiter's orbit, they saw them. 5 ships, each one sleek and dark against the stars, about twice the size of the Harbinger. They had no visible windows or external lights. Their hulls reflected no light, as if they swallowed it. "They're beautiful," whispered Officer Kelly Rodriguez, the Harbinger's pilot. Miller gave the order to stop at a respectful distance. "Lieutenant Martinez, send the greeting package." Martinez's fingers flew over her console. The message went out, humanity's first words to another intelligence. For 3 hours, nothing happened. The crew took shifts watching the alien vessels, which remained completely still. Then finally, the aliens responded. A series of mathematical patterns appeared on Martinez's screen, followed by what looked like diagrams of their ships and biological information about their species. "They understood," Martinez said, her voice filled with wonder. "And they're responding in kind. They're following our communication template." Miller felt a weight lift from his shoulders. "Send the second package. Tell them we would like to arrange a face-to-face meeting if possible." The message went out. The response came back faster this time. What appeared to be an agreement. "They're opening some kind of bay doors," said Walsh, pointing to the largest alien ship. A small vessel emerged, heading slowly toward the Harbinger. "This is it," Miller said. "Humanity's first meeting with alien life." No one saw the energy buildup. No sensors detected the weapons charging. The first blast hit the Harbinger's engine compartment, cutting the ship nearly in half. The second blast hit the bridge. In the chaos, Walsh pulled the barely conscious Martinez into an escape pod. 4 other crew members stumbled in behind them. The pod ejected automatically as the Harbinger began to break apart. As they tumbled away from the destruction, more alien ships appeared from behind Jupiter's moons. Dozens, then hundreds. An armada that had been hiding, waiting. The last thing Walsh saw before the escape pod's emergency systems activated cryosleep was a massive alien fleet heading toward Earth, and the burning remains of humanity's first diplomatic mission scattered across space. Earth had just met its first aliens, and they had come for war. The emergency signal from the Harbinger's escape pod reached Earth 12 hours later. By then, Earth's long-range telescopes had already spotted the alien fleet moving through the solar system. Admiral Evelyn Carter stood in the Global Defense Command Center, watching the red dots on the screen multiply. Each dot was a ship. There were hundreds now. "How long until they reach us?" she asked. "At their current speed, 30 hours, replied Lieutenant Daniel Shaw. His voice was steady, but his hands shook. The room filled with military leaders from around the world. They had trained for earthquakes, nuclear war, and asteroids. No one had truly believed they would need to defend Earth from aliens. "Get me the president," Carter ordered. Within the hour, defense plans were activated worldwide. Civilian evacuation to underground shelters began. Every military satellite and weapon system went on high alert. Earth's 10 orbital defense platforms, originally built to protect against asteroids, were now humanity's first line of defense. Dr. Paul Johnson worked frantically in his laboratory below the Rocky Mountains. As one of Earth's leading quantum physicists, he had been rushed to the secure facility as soon as the alien fleet was detected. "They'll have technology we can't imagine," he told his team as they analyzed the scans of the alien vessels. "But they still have to obey the laws of physics. Find me something, anything, that might help us understand their weapons or defenses." 26 hours after the distress call, the aliens struck. The first orbital defense platform exploded without warning. The second managed to fire its railguns once before it too was destroyed. The aliens had not bothered to send any message or demand. They simply attacked. From his bunker, President William Harris watched the feeds from around the world. "Why? Why would they do this?" he asked, but no one had an answer. The alien ships entered Earth's atmosphere over major cities. Their weapons turned night into day. Beijing, London, Cairo, and Los Angeles were hit first. Tall buildings crumbled. Streets became rivers of fire. In Moscow, a single alien ship hovered over the city center for 10 minutes, then released something that looked like black rain. Whatever it touched began to dissolve. Admiral Carter directed Earth's counterattack from her underground command center. Fighter jets scrambled worldwide, but they were like flies against giants. Military bases fired every missile they had. A few alien ships showed damage. Most did not. "Our weapons barely scratched them," reported General Hank Wilson from the European Command. His transmission cut off suddenly as an explosion rocked his facility. In his lab, Dr. Johnson recorded everything. The way alien shields flickered when hit, the specific frequency of their energy weapons, the unusual radiation their engines emitted. "There's a pattern here," he muttered. "Everything has a weakness, even them." By the second day, half of Earth's military forces were destroyed. The alien ships began landing in strategic locations, near water sources, mountain ranges rich with minerals, and major population centers. Ground troops emerged from the ships. They stood 7 feet tall, with 4 arms and skin that reflected light like metal. They carried weapons that turned soldiers to ash. From a hidden bunker in what used to be Denver, Admiral Carter received the president's latest order. "We are not giving up," he told her. "Tell our remaining forces to fall back. We need to regroup and find another way to fight." In Earth orbit, smaller alien ships began constructing what looked like massive mining platforms. Below them, the oceans churned as something huge stirred beneath the surface. Gregory Walsh and the 5 other survivors from the Harbinger remained in their escape pod, hidden in the debris field of Saturn's rings. Their emergency beacon was silent now. They watched through the pod's small window as distant Earth, their home, burned with new fires each time they glimpsed it. "What do we do now?" asked Martinez, her voice barely a whisper. Walsh stared at the alien communication data they had managed to save. "We learn everything we can about them, and then we find a way to fight back." 6 months passed. The aliens, who called themselves the Cracks, controlled most major cities. They built tall metal structures that reached into the clouds. Strange machines dug deep into the Earth. Every day, massive ships carried away Earth's water and minerals. Colonel Diane Rodriguez wiped sweat from her forehead as she looked through binoculars at the alien patrol. From her hiding spot in an old subway tunnel, She could see 5 crack soldiers walking down what used to be Michigan Avenue in Chicago. The city was hardly recognizable now. "They're following the same route as yesterday," she whispered to the man beside her. "Their patterns never change." Alan Wright nodded. Before the invasion, he had been an engineer at NASA. Now he was the Resistance's best weapon maker. "That's their weakness," he said. "They can't think outside their programming." Rodriguez and Wright led one of the largest human resistance cells left in North America. 300 people lived in the old subway tunnels and sewers beneath Chicago. Similar groups existed worldwide, connected by an old-fashioned radio network that the cracks couldn't easily detect. "I need to show you something," Wright said once they returned to their underground base. He led Rodriguez to his workshop, where odd-looking devices sat on a table. Parts from Crack's weapons had been taken apart and rebuilt into new tools. Wright pointed to a small screen showing waves of light. "See this? I've been studying their shield technology. It pulses at regular intervals, exactly 3.7 seconds between each pulse. There's a tiny gap when the shield resets." Rodriguez leaned closer. "Can we use that?" "If we time our attacks perfectly, yes. Their shields aren't perfect." That night, Rodriguez used the radio to share Wright's discovery with other resistance groups. The transmission was short, just 30 seconds. Any longer might let the cracks find them. Dr. Lisa Powell received the message in her hidden camp in the Australian outback. As the former head strategist for the United Nations Defense Force, Powell now coordinated the global resistance efforts. She recorded Wright's findings in her notebook, adding it to everything else they had learned about the cracks. "Their weakness isn't just technological," she told her team as they gathered around a small fire. "It's psychological. They can't handle surprises. They don't adapt quickly. Everything they do follows strict patterns." One of her team members, Jack Foster, held up a small device he had taken from a destroyed crack scout ship. "I got this working," he said. "It shows their fleet positions. Look, there's a massive command ship in orbit. All their orders come from there." Powell studied the device carefully. The command ship was 20 times larger than the others. If they could somehow reach it. Meanwhile, in a cracks detention center outside Paris, humans were being forced to work sorting Earth materials for transport. Guards watched them with weapons ready. One guard, different from the others, observed the humans with unusual interest. This cracks, named Vorzak, had been studying human behavior for months. Unlike his fellow soldiers, he found humans puzzling. They were physically weaker than cracks, with inferior technology, yet they kept fighting. They adapted. They created new tools from garbage. They communicated in ways the cracks couldn't track. Vorzak watched as a human worker secretly passed something to another when guards weren't looking. The humans helped each other constantly, even at risk to themselves. Cracks never did this. Cracks followed orders. Individually, they were nothing. That night, a small team led by Rodriguez attacked a cracks patrol, timing their weapons fire precisely with the shield pulses that Wright had discovered. For the first time, their attacks broke through. 3 crack soldiers fell. The humans vanished back into the ruins before reinforcements arrived. They left behind a spray-painted message on a wall. "Earth fights back." The resistance had found a way to hurt the invaders. It was small, but it was a beginning. News of the successful attack spread through the resistance network. More groups began targeting the gaps in crack shields. Small victories added up. The cracks responded by increasing patrols and adding more guards, but they didn't change their shield technology. They couldn't imagine that humans could understand their advanced systems. Chief Science Officer Nathan Kim worked in a hidden laboratory beneath the ruins of San Francisco. Before the invasion, he had designed communication satellites. Now he focused on taking apart Cracks technology to learn its secrets. "Their communication system is incredible," he told his team as they examined a damaged Cracks helmet. "It works faster than light somehow, but it's designed for their minds, not ours." Kim connected wires from the helmet to a computer. Strange symbols appeared on the screen. After weeks of work, he began to understand patterns in the alien language. It was all about order, hierarchy, and absolute obedience. They literally can't think for themselves, Kim explained to Rodriguez during their weekly radio call. Each Krax receives orders and follows them exactly. They don't question. They don't improvise. Rodriguez thought about human soldiers who were trained to follow orders, but also to think on their feet. That's why they hate us, she realized. We're unpredictable. Aboard the massive Krax command ship, High Commander Greg Thar received disturbing reports. Human resistance was growing. Attacks were becoming more effective. Several mining operations had been disrupted. They are animals, his second-in-command stated. They should have surrendered by now. Greg Thar studied the report. These animals are learning our weaknesses faster than expected. Increase labor camp security, double production quotas, break their will completely. In the Paris detention center, Vorzak watched as new orders arrived. Guards began pushing humans to work longer hours with less food. Punishments became more severe, but instead of breaking, the humans seemed to grow more determined. One night, Vorzak observed something unusual. A human prisoner named Peter Clark had created a small tool from scraps of metal. He used it to fix something in another prisoner's sleeping area. The second prisoner had nothing to offer in return, yet Clark helped anyway. Why did you assist when there is no benefit to you? Vorzak asked when the guards weren't listening. Clark looked surprised that a Krax would speak to him directly. Because he needed help, he answered simply. The concept puzzled Vorzak. Krax only helped others when ordered to or when it provided clear personal advantage. Meanwhile, on the other side of the world, Sophia Martinez and Gregory Walsh had finally reached Earth in their modified escape pod. They landed in a remote area of Brazil where resistance fighters found them. Their knowledge of Krax communication patterns from the initial contact proved invaluable. We need to connect all resistance groups, Martinez told Dr. Powell during a secure meeting. The Krax fleet has a rigid command structure. If we can disrupt their communication, lower-ranking Krax won't know what to do. Powell nodded. And we need better weapons. Every time we destroy a Krax ship or patrol, we need to salvage everything possible. In Chicago, Wright had created a new device using salvaged Krax parts. It's a scanner, he explained to Rodriguez. It can detect Krax patrols from half a mile away, and it shows us exactly when their shields pulse. Rodriguez smiled for the first time in months. Make as many as you can. We'll distribute them through the network. Across Earth, humans were adapting, learning, and sharing knowledge. They fought differently than the Krax expected. Instead of large armies with clear targets, humans formed small groups that struck quickly and disappeared. They modified Krax technology in ways the aliens never considered. They used old systems the Krax ignored: radio waves, paper maps, and hand signals. The Krax had expected humans to fight like Krax would. They were wrong, and that mistake was beginning to cost them. 1 year after the invasion, Admiral Carter emerged from deep hiding. Using old military networks and the resistance radio system, she called together the leaders of major resistance cells. They met in an abandoned mine shaft in the Colorado mountains. Rodriguez arrived from Chicago. Powell came from Australia. Kim brought his research team from San Francisco. Resistance leaders from Europe, Africa, and Asia joined by secure radio. For the first time, Earth's defenders gathered to create a unified plan. We've been fighting small battles, Carter said, looking at the tired faces around her. It's time for something bigger. Operation Trojan Horse. Carter unveiled a detailed map of Earth's orbit, showing the position of the Krax command ship. Everything they do starts here. Every order, every patrol route, every mining operation. Powell stepped forward. If we can take out this ship, the Krax will be confused. Their command structure will fall apart. But how do we reach it? Asked Rodriguez. We have no spaceships left. Wright smiled slightly. Actually, we do. He unfolded plans for a modified shuttle. I've been rebuilding one using parts from crashed crack ships. It's small, but it can reach orbit. Kim added, and I've created devices that can disrupt their quantum communication systems. We place these throughout their command ship, activate them simultaneously, and their entire network crashes. The plan took shape. They would need a small team to infiltrate the command ship. They would need to create enough distractions on Earth to pull Crack's forces away from orbit. Most importantly, they would need someone who could pilot the rebuilt shuttle past Crack's defenses. Commander Eric Russell volunteered immediately. As one of Earth's few surviving space pilots, he had the right skills. "I can get us there," he said simply. For the next month, preparations moved forward. Resistance cells worldwide prepared for coordinated attacks on Crack's mining operations. Wright completed the stealth shuttle, disguising it with salvaged Crack's hull material. Kim finished building his quantum disruption devices and trained Russell's team how to place them. The night before the mission, Rodriguez found Russell checking the shuttle one last time. "Nervous?" she asked. Russell adjusted a control panel before answering. "Wouldn't be human if I wasn't. But someone has to do this. The shuttle only has enough fuel for a one-way trip," Rodriguez reminded him. "Even if you succeed, you'll be trapped up there." Russell nodded. "I know. Worth it if it gives Earth a chance." The next morning, as the sun rose, resistance fighters around the world launched simultaneous attacks on Crack's installations. Mining operations were sabotaged. Patrols were ambushed. Weapons depots exploded. The Cracks responded exactly as predicted, sending reinforcements from orbit to key locations. Wright watched the radar as Crack ships moved away from the command ship. "Now's your window," he told Russell. "Orbital defenses are at minimum." Russell and his team of 4 boarded the modified shuttle. The engines, a mix of human and Crack's technology, hummed to life. The shuttle rose slowly from its hiding place in an abandoned mountain mine. "Good luck," Wright said through the radio. "Make it count," Rodriguez added. The shuttle accelerated upward, its hull plating making it appear as just another small Crack's transport returning to the fleet. Russell navigated carefully, following the exact flight patterns that Kim had identified as typical Crack's routes. They reached orbit without detection. The massive command ship loomed ahead, 20 times larger than anything humans had ever built. Russell guided the shuttle toward a secondary loading bay. "Remember," he told his team, "we have 6 hours to place all the devices before the Cracks realize their ships on Earth aren't reporting back regularly." The shuttle docked successfully. As the airlock opened, Russell led his team into the heart of the enemy command center. What they found inside surprised even them. Inside the Crack's command ship, Russell and his team moved through dark corridors. The air smelled strange, like metal and something sweet. They wore stolen Crack's armor over their suits, but they knew it wouldn't fool the aliens for long. "First device goes here," whispered Sam Baker, the team's engineer. He placed one of Kim's quantum disruptors inside a wall panel. The small device blinked green, then went dark as it began to work. Russell checked the map Kim had created based on captured Crack's data. 5 more to go. "We need to reach the central communication hub." They passed rooms filled with strange machines. Some had glowing screens showing Earth below. In others, Crack's workers sorted through piles of Earth minerals. Russell wanted to stop and fight, but their mission was more important. On Earth, the coordinated attacks continued. Rodriguez led her team against a major Crack's water processing plant near Lake Michigan. They timed their attacks perfectly with the shield pulses. 3 Crack ships crashed into the lake. The resistance fighters cheered, but Rodriguez knew they needed to hold out longer to give Russell's team enough time. "Keep pushing," she told her fighters. "Make them call for more backup from orbit." The Crack's response was massive. More ships descended from orbit. High Commander Grekthar grew angry as reports came in. Humans were attacking everywhere at once. This was not their usual pattern. "Something is wrong," he told his officers. "They are too coordinated. Check the command ship defenses." Aboard the command ship, Russell's team placed the fourth device near the ship's engine room. As they moved toward the fifth location, they turned a corner and came face to face with a group of crack soldiers. For a moment, both sides froze in surprise. Then the cracks raised their weapons. "Run," Russell shouted. His team scattered as energy blasts hit the walls around them. Alarms wailed throughout the ship. Russell and Baker made it to a side corridor, but the other three team members were cut off. Through his helmet radio, Russell heard gunfire, then silence. "We need to complete the mission," Baker said, his voice shaking. Russell nodded. "2 more devices. Let's move." As crack soldiers searched the ship, Russell and Baker crawled through maintenance tunnels between decks. They placed the fifth device near what appeared to be crew quarters. Only one remained, the most important one, meant for the central communication hub. On Earth, Powell received urgent messages from resistance cells worldwide. The cracks were changing tactics, becoming more aggressive and less predictable. They were adapting. "They know something's happening," she told Admiral Carter. "We're running out of time." Carter looked at the clock. Russell's team had been aboard the command ship for 5 hours. "They need more time. Tell all cells to withdraw to safe positions, but keep the cracks busy with hit-and-run attacks." In his laboratory, Kim monitored signals from the devices already placed on the command ship. 4 are working," he told Wright. "If they can place all 6, we can bring down their entire network." Wright stared at the radar showing hundreds of crack ships in motion. "Even if it works, they still outnumber us. They still have better weapons. But they won't be able to coordinate," Kim said. "And we will." On the command ship, Russell and Baker reached the central hub. Through a window, they could see dozens of Cracks officers at control stations. In the center stood a tall Cracks wearing ornate armor, Grekthar himself. "We'll never get in there unnoticed," Baker whispered. Russell looked at the last device in his hand, then at a nearby ventilation shaft. "We don't need to. We just need to get this close enough." As they worked to remove the vent cover, footsteps echoed in the corridor behind them. A squad of crack soldiers approached, led by an officer with a scanner. Baker turned to Russell. "Go, I'll hold them off." Before Russell could argue, Baker pushed him toward the vent and turned to face the approaching cracks. He fired his weapon, drawing them away from Russell's position. Russell crawled through the narrow shaft, the sounds of fighting fading behind him. He reached a junction directly above the communication hub. Below him, through metal grating, he could see Grekthar studying battle reports. Russell activated the final device and secured it to the shaft wall. Its light blinked green. "This is for Earth," he whispered. Russell watched as the final device connected to the ship's systems. All 6 quantum disruptors were now in place. He checked his timer. Only minutes remained before Kim would activate them from Earth. Russell needed to move quickly if he wanted to escape the immediate blast zone. As he crawled back through the ventilation shaft, he heard crack soldiers still searching for him. There was no sign of Baker. Russell pulled out a small radio and sent a brief coded message. "Package delivered." On Earth, Kim received the signal. He looked at Admiral Carter and nodded. "They did it. All devices are in position." Carter didn't smile. Too many had died to reach this moment. "How long until activation?" 10 minutes, Kim replied. "I've programmed them to create a cascading failure in their quantum network. Their entire command structure will collapse." Meanwhile, something unexpected was happening across Earth. Sofia Martinez had been working with resistance groups to establish contact with other alien ships in the solar system. Using modified Cracks communication devices, she had discovered something surprising. The Cracks had enemies. "They're called the Archon," Martinez explained to Powell. "They'd been monitoring the Cracks' invasion from the edge of our solar system. They hate the Cracks as much as we do." Powell looked skeptical. "Why would they help us?" "Because the Cracks have done this before," Martinez said. "They've destroyed 12 other civilizations. The Arkan are gathering allies to stop them. A message came through from an Arkan ship. We are prepared to assist when the Crack's command structure falls. In Chicago, Rodriguez and her fighters were surrounded in an old hospital building. Crack's forces had adapted to their tactics and cut off all escape routes. As energy blasts shattered the walls around them, Rodriguez checked her watch. "Just hold on," she told her team. "A few more minutes." Aboard the command ship, Russell found his way to a small maintenance pod. It wasn't designed for space travel, but it might survive a short trip back to Earth. As he prepared to steal it, alarms suddenly blared throughout the ship. The Cracks had found one of the devices. Grekthar ordered an immediate system lockdown. "Find the others," he commanded. "Shut down all communication channels." But it was too late. In Kim's laboratory, the scientist pressed the activation button. All 6 quantum disruptors powered up simultaneously. On the command ship, chaos erupted. Control screens went dark. Communication systems failed. Crack soldiers stood frozen, suddenly cut off from the hierarchy that told them what to do. Grekthar shouted orders, but without the quantum network, his commands reached only those in the same room. Russell felt the ship shudder. Emergency lights flashed on and off. He climbed into the maintenance pod and launched it from a small service bay. As the pod drifted away from the command ship, Russell saw Crack's vessels throughout Earth orbit suddenly changing course, some colliding with each other as their coordination collapsed. On Earth, the effect was immediate. Crack's ground forces stopped in confusion. Some continued fighting, but many simply held their positions, waiting for orders that never came. Rodriguez saw the Crack soldiers surrounding the hospital suddenly stop their attack. "Now," she shouted, and her team burst from the building, overwhelming the confused aliens. Similar scenes played out worldwide as resistance fighters seized the moment. Powell directed teams to capture Crack's communication equipment. Wright led groups to secure alien weapons. In space, the Arkan fleet emerged from hiding beyond Mars. Their ships, sleek and silver, approached Earth orbit. Martinez established direct communication with their commander. "The Cracks have fallen before on other worlds," the Arkan commander told her. "But never this quickly." "What did you do?" Martinez smiled. "We used their greatest weakness against them. They can't imagine beings who think for themselves." As Russell's pod burned through Earth's atmosphere, he saw Crack's ships retreating. Some headed back to the command ship, which now drifted powerless. Others fled the solar system entirely. A few were being pursued by Arkan vessels. Rodriguez found Wright watching the skies from a rooftop in Chicago. "Did we just win?" she asked. Wright shook his head. "Not yet, but for the first time, we have a chance." 3 months after the command ship went dark, Earth looked different. Crack structures still stood in major cities, but now humans worked alongside Arkan engineers to repurpose them. The last pockets of Crack's resistance had been eliminated 2 weeks earlier when Admiral Carter led a joint human-Arkan force against a Crack stronghold in the Andes Mountains. Russell had survived his return to Earth, though his pod crashed in the Pacific Ocean. A fishing boat found him floating on wreckage. Now he stood with Powell and Rodriguez in what used to be the United Nations building in New York, watching representatives from 12 alien species gather. "I never imagined we'd be hosting a Galactic Council meeting," Powell said quietly. Rodriguez nodded, "especially not just 18 months after we thought we might go extinct." The Arkan delegation approached them. Unlike the 4-armed Cracks, the Arkan were tall and slender with pale blue skin. Their leader, Commander Zinn, bowed slightly. "Your people have accomplished something remarkable," Zinn told them. "No species has ever defeated the Cracks so completely." "We had help," Russell said. "But it was your strategy that worked," Zinn replied. "Your ability to adapt, to think independently. These are rare qualities in our galaxy." Inside the meeting hall, Carter stood at the podium, addressing the gathered representatives. Earth's remaining military leaders sat on one side of the room. Alien delegates filled the other side. "The Crack's dominion has retreated beyond the Oort cloud," Carter announced. Our combined fleet is monitoring their movements. They've lost nearly 60% of their ships and their command structure is still in chaos. Images appeared on the wall behind her, showing Krax vessels fleeing the solar system. Other images showed captured Krax technology being studied in laboratories around Earth. Now we must ensure they never threaten another world, Carter continued. That's why today we propose the formation of a new alliance, not just for defense, but for the sharing of knowledge and resources. The alien representatives murmured among themselves. Many nodded in agreement. The Krax had terrorized this sector of the galaxy for centuries. Now they had been driven back by a species they had considered primitive. In Chicago, Wright and Kim watched the broadcast from their new research facility. The building was filled with salvaged Krax technology and Arkan scientists who had come to work with humans. "Did you ever imagine this?" Wright asked, gesturing at a device they had created by combining Krax power systems with human-computer interfaces. Kim shook his head. "Never." But then, the Krax never imagined humans would understand their technology either. That was their mistake. On the other side of the world, Martinez worked with a team of human and alien linguists to create a universal translation system. The wall of her office was covered with diagrams showing the connections between different alien languages. The Krax saw our differences as weakness, she explained to a young assistant. They couldn't understand why humans have so many languages, so many cultures. But that diversity is what saved us. We think differently from each other. We solve problems in different ways. Back in New York, the council meeting concluded with the signing of the first interstellar treaty Earth had ever participated in. The Galactic Defense Alliance was born. Earth would receive advanced technology and protection. In return, humans would share their unique perspectives and join the defense network against the Krax and any future threats. As the alien delegates filed out, Rodriguez turned to Powell. "What happens now?" Powell looked through the window where Earth's first interstellar ships were being constructed using combined human and alien technology. "Now we take our place out there. The Krax thought they could exterminate us. Instead, they introduced us to the galaxy." Russell joined them, watching the ships under construction. "The Arkans say there are thousands of inhabited worlds out there. Most have never heard of humans. They will now," Rodriguez said. "The species that fought back when the Krax ambushed their world." Powell nodded. "The species that did what no one else could do." The sun set over New York, casting long shadows across the rebuilt city. In orbit above Earth, the captured Krax command ship was being transformed into humanity's first space station. Its weapons were gone, replaced with scientific equipment and diplomatic quarters. Where once it had represented destruction, it now stood for something new. Humanity's first step into a much larger universe.